So picture the CEO of a Fortune 50 company in your head.
Okay, yep, got the image.
Right. Now erase that and picture the lead guitarist of a college rock band.
That is a very different image.
Completely different, right? It's almost impossible to believe those two images belong to the exact same person. But today, for this deep dive, we're looking at the life of Indra Nooyi.
Oh, wow. Yeah, she is an absolute powerhouse.
Exactly. I mean, she was the first woman of color and the first immigrant to lead a massive global corporation like PepsiCo. And the craziest part, long before she was, securing 15 honorary degrees and India's prestigious Padma Bhushan Award.
Which is a huge deal, by the way.
Right, the third highest civilian honor in India. But before all of that, she was literally shredding on a lead guitar in a rock band in Chennai, India.
I love that so much. It just totally shatters that stuffy corporate executive stereotype right out of the gate.
It really does. So our mission today is to break down a really fascinating document we found. It's titled, What a Boarder Can Learn from Indra Nooyi.
Yeah, and while the source frames these insights specifically for students living in international boarding schools,
Hmm.
I mean, the lessons are completely universal.
Oh, 100%.
They're essentially shortcuts, like blueprints for becoming a highly effective, culturally intelligent leader in literally any complex environment you find yourself in.
So to set the stage for you listening, let's look at where she started. Because it's a striking contrast right out of the gate.
It really is. I mean, we have this pervasive idea of what a corporate leader is supposed to look and sound like.
Yeah, it's a highly predictable shape.
Exactly, a very specific mold.
Oh,
But Nui's story proves that contorting yourself to fit that expected mold
yeah.
is actually a massive strategic error.
Well, and her baseline was established long before she ever reached the corporate world.
Right. She was born in Chennai in 1955,
Mm.
and she built this incredibly solid intellectual foundation there, earning a Bachelor of Science from Madras Christian College and then an MBA from the prestigious Indian Institute of Management in Calcutta.
But then things shift dramatically.
Yeah, they do. Because she arrives in the United States in 1978 as an international student at the Yale School of Management. And she faced an entirely different reality.
I mean, she had very little money, right?
Very little. She was working as a receptionist just to survive. Plus, she was one of the very few women in her program, and easily among the least financially resourced in her entire cohort.
And that financial reality, I mean, that creates an immediate visceral pressure to assimilate.
Oh, absolutely.
When you feel like you're on the outside looking in, the natural human instinct is to hide the things that make you different. And she faces this ultimate test right away at a McKinsey recruiting event.
Oh, the McKinsey story. This is so good.
Right. Because the pressure to look the part there is immense. All her American peers are showing up in these traditional, super expensive business suits.
Which you literally could not afford.
Exactly. So rather than trying to, scrape together some cheap imitation of what everyone else was wearing, she showed up to this high-stakes interview in a traditional Indian sari, and she got the interview.
She did. Now, she didn't land the job on that specific occasion, but that moment is it's the perfect distillation of her entire operational philosophy.
How so?
Well, she refused to play a rigged game.
Uh,
If you walk into a room and try to be a second-rate version of the dominant culture, you're instantly placing yourself at a disadvantage.
yeah, you're competing on their terms.
Right, using their metrics.
Uh-huh.
But by showing up in a sari, she fundamentally changed the axis of evaluation. She forced the room to deal with her entirely on her own terms.
She brought her whole background, her cultural identity, and her values straight into the room.
Exactly. Because difference, especially in a complex environment, is an advantage,
Mm.
not a liability.
Because it makes you memorable. It's like, okay, imagine you join a band
Okay.
and you notice everyone else is playing the drums. The immense social pressure is to put down whatever you brought and pick up some drumsticks so you fit the vibe.
Right, you want to fit in.
But if an entire band is just playing the exact same instrument, it creates this flat, monotonous sound. And worse, if you just picked up the drums yesterday, you're now competing against people who have played them their whole lives.
You're going to lose.
You will lose. But Nooyi walked into these corporate spaces and essentially said, I brought a lead guitar and I'm going to play it.
I love that analogy. By playing the instrument she brought, she owned the category completely.
Yeah.
And that unabashed ownership of her identity It really became the operational bedrock of her leadership later on.
Well, right, because decades later, when she was finally appointed CEO, she didn't view her leadership as just some personal victory lap.
No, not at all. She viewed it as an immediate duty to do right by women, by people of color, by immigrants, and by people of Indian origin.
Because she had never hidden those parts of herself to get to the top, so she didn't have to suddenly, like, pivot or pander.
Exactly. She had the authentic credibility to champion those communities from the absolute highest level of corporate authority.
But, authenticity only gets you in the room. It establishes your baseline.
It's the foundation, yeah.
It's the engine, but you still need a steering wheel. And for Nooyi, that meant pointing her energy incredibly far into the future, completely bucking the standard short-term pressures of the business world.
Yeah, she played the long game.
Huge long game. When she joined PepsiCo in 1994, she didn't come up through the sales department.
Which is, the traditional immediate fast track to the top.
Right. Instead, she came through strategic planning. She operated on a timeline of decades, not financial quarters.
And this right here is where we see the most direct parallel to life in an international boarding school.
Oh, for sure.
Because a boarding environment is essentially a microcosm of high-stakes pressure.
It really is.
It is so easy for a student to get completely consumed by the immediate panic of the next exam or the essay due tomorrow or just, the social dynamics in the dorm.
It feels like life or death in the moment.
Totally. So the challenge is to step back and ask yourself, what habits am I building this term that will serve me in 3 years? How do my daily choices right now architect the person I'm going to be a decade from now?
Okay, I have to stop you there, though.
Go ahead.
Because that sounds great in theory, but isn't it a massive luxury to think in decades?
What do you mean?
Let's be real. If you're a 16-year-old and you have a grade-defining chemistry final tomorrow, or if you're a corporate executive with an earnings call next week and activist investors are breathing down your neck.
Yeah, the pressure is on.
Right. How do you practically justify ignoring the immediate fire right in front of you to stare beautifully off into the horizon? Like you can't execute a 10-year plan if you fail out of school or get fired tomorrow.
You are absolutely right. And honestly, this is the most common misunderstanding of what long-term strategy actually is.
Okay.
Strategic thinking does not mean you ignore the fire in front of you. You still have to pass the chemistry final.
Yeah.
You still have to deliver the quarterly earnings.
So what's the difference?
The mechanism of strategic thinking is simply the discipline of factoring tomorrow's reality into today's actions. It's about how you put out the fire.
Okay, walk me through what that actually looks like mechanically.
Sure. Let's take the student. You can pass the chemistry test by cramming all night, chugging energy drinks, and just regurgitating the answers.
Been there.
Right. We all have. You put out the fire, but you've built a habit of procrastination, you've damaged your health, and you won't retain the information for the advanced class next year.
So you survive the day, but you sabotage the decade.
Exactly. A strategic student builds a study system over weeks. They pass the test, but the real victory is the intellectual stamina they built along the way.
Wow.
And in the corporate world, Nooyi still hit her targets. But she refused to hit them by, say, slashing research and development or cutting corners on quality just to make the current quarter look artificially good.
She refused to let present survival cannibalize future growth. So she's looking at the horizon. She's operating with this dual vision. And because she's looking that far ahead, she spots a massive tectonic shift coming long before anyone else does.
Oh, this is the pivot.
Yeah. In the 1990s, while she's serving as president and chief financial officer, she looks at the data and realizes consumer tastes are fundamentally shifting.
Right. People are eventually going to abandon sugary drinks and highly processed snacks.
She sees the iceberg coming.
Yeah.
So she pitches a massive pivot to her colleagues to get ahead of the trend, and they completely shoot her down.
They really did.
They tell her, we're a soda and chips company.
Which, operationally, they were. I mean, that was their entire identity, their supply chain, their profit center. Yeah. The resistance she faced wasn't just stubbornness, It was the natural immune response of a massive organization protecting its current cash cow.
So she hits a wall.
She does. But the crucial mechanism here is strategic patience. She set the idea aside, but she did not abandon it.
She just waited.
She waited until she possessed the structural authority to execute it. And when she became CEO in 2006, she immediately launched Performance with Purpose,
which was this radical, integrated belief that commercial success and societal good are mutually reinforcing.
Yes.
It makes me think of a surfer waiting for a wave.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You don't paddle out and try to force the ocean to move. That just exhausts you and achieves absolutely nothing.
Right, you can't fight the ocean.
You paddle out, you position your board, and you wait. You expend your political and operational energy only when the momentum of the market is finally swelling underneath you.
She held on to that vision from the 90s, positioned herself, and when the consumer market finally shifted in 2006, she caught the wave perfectly.
And we have to look at how that actually worked mechanically to generate profit, because performance with purpose was not some charity initiative.
No, not at all. It
No.
was hard-nosed business strategy.
Exactly.
By drastically expanding healthier product lines, she captured an entirely new, health-conscious demographic before her competitors even knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And by significantly reducing the company's environmental footprint, she wasn't just being green. She was optimizing the supply chain and saving massive amounts of money on energy and water usage over the long haul.
And she also introduced paid parental leave for both men and women.
We
I
did,
know.
which attracted and retained top-tier global talent who would have otherwise gone to more progressive tech companies.
And the results really just speak for themselves. Under her 12-year leadership as CEO, net revenue grew from $35 billion to over $63 billion.
Wow.
Net profit more than doubled, and she delivered a 162% total shareholder return.
It's incredible. And the lesson here for you listening is that believing in something visionary is simply not enough. Persistence is the actual mechanism of change. There is this specific piece of advice she offers that is critical for anyone trying to shift a culture. She says, if a trend is staring at you, it doesn't matter if you're CEO number 2 or number 3, you've got to keep talking about it.
You have to be willing to be the broken record in the room.
Exactly.
But there is a massive complication here. Holding on to a vision for a decade is only half the battle. If you are going to push a global initiative, you suddenly hit a wall where the very concept of health or purpose means something completely different in Tokyo than it does in Texas.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you execute a unified vision across more than 180 countries without the whole thing just falling apart?
You do it through cultural intelligence. Nooyi realized very quickly that exporting a rigid U.S. corporate model to the rest of the world was a recipe for failure.
It never works.
It doesn't. The company had to fundamentally rethink itself, its supply chains, its flavors, and its marketing for the specific culture, tastes, and values of each local environment.
And her own personal experience moving between cultures really helped with that, right?
Oh, definitely. Knowing what it meant to be a guest in a different context gave her the blueprint for this. And again, this is exactly what international boarding schools are designed to simulate.
They're like microcosms of the global economy.
Exactly. They force different cultures to live, work, and negotiate in shared spaces.
But, and I see this in corporate and academic environments all the time, it is incredibly easy to fake cultural intelligence.
Oh, yeah. People do it all the time.
Right. People learn the right HR buzzwords, they smile, they politely acknowledge that someone else does things differently, and then they go right back to operating entirely on their own terms.
Yep, it's just tourism.
Exactly. It's just corporate tourism. So how does a person or a company actually move from merely tolerating a difference to genuinely being changed by it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the mechanism that separates fake cultural intelligence from the real thing is vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, because polite acknowledgement is a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It keeps your own worldview intact and unchallenged. It basically says, I see how you do it, but my way is still the default.
Right.
To be genuinely changed by another culture requires you to admit that your perspective is incomplete. It requires you to look at a local market or a classmate from another country and realize their method might actually be superior to yours.
Wow.
When PepsiCo localized under Nooyi, they didn't just change the language on the packaging. They altered the fundamental chemistry of their products to align with local palates. They let the local culture dictate the operation.
That's a huge shift.
It is. And in an interconnected future, that level of deep structural adaptability is the most valuable skill you can possess.
So let's tally this up. You have to operate on a global scale. You have to hold on to a decades-long purpose while surviving short-term demands. You have to maintain immense cultural intelligence, and you have to do it all while remaining completely vulnerable and open to change.
It's a lot.
It is a crushing amount of responsibility. Yet, what stands out about Nui's leadership isn't just that she carried this weight, but how brutally honest she was about how messy it looked behind the scenes.
Yeah, she was incredibly transparent.
Oh,
I mean, she was responsible for hundreds of thousands of employees, the economies of entire communities, and the environmental impact of a massive global supply chain.
yeah.
But she absolutely refused to present a sanitized, effortless version of what that required. She was famously candid about the friction between her professional demands and her personal reality, being a mother, a wife, and a daughter all at the same time.
There's a quote from her memoir that just feels like a heavy exhale.
Oh, I think I know the one.
She wrote, "There is no balance, it's a constant juggling act. And many times it's the people around us who make this juggling possible."
Yes.
I cannot tell you how much relief there is in hearing that. We live in an era that is completely obsessed with finding the perfect work-life balance.
But step.
We are sold this idea that if we just optimize our mornings or buy the right planner, everything will run smoothly. It is profoundly refreshing for someone at the absolute pinnacle of corporate success to bluntly admit that balance is a myth,
A total myth.
and that survival actually requires leaning heavily on other people.
It is refreshing, but it's also a highly strategic form of leadership.
How so?
Well, think about why a sanitized image fails. It creates a brittle culture. If the leader presents a flawless version of success, they set an impossible standard.
Oh, I see.
The people under them become terrified of making mistakes, so they hide their errors. They burn out trying to maintain the illusion of balance. By telling the truth about her own juggling act, Nooyi built genuine trust.
Because true responsibility isn't about being perfect.
Exactly. For a CEO or for a boarding student managing a chaotic schedule, accountability looks like managing your own routines, owning up to mistakes without making excuses, and caring for the shared spaces you inhabit.
Trust isn't forged in massive, heroic moments.
No, it's built through the compound interest of small, consistent acts of daily accountability.
It's the small things repeated over time that construct the foundation for the massive things.
Right.
And if we look back at the entirety of Indra Nooyi's trajectory from a middle-class upbringing in Chennai to arriving in the U.S. with nothing to completely rewiring the DNA of a global giant over 12 years, the overarching realization is that none of this was inevitable.
It wasn't destiny. It was a deliberate construction. She built it through extreme discipline, immense strategic patience, and purposeful long-term thinking.
Yeah.
But the engine driving all of it was an absolute refusal to be anything other than exactly who she was.
Which brings us back to where we started.
Exactly. And for anyone listening, whatever complex environment you are navigating right now, it provides the immediate structure to practice these exact traits today. You don't wait until you are the CEO to start practicing authenticity or long-term thinking.
You build the muscle memory now.
Right. Long before the stakes get higher.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, looking at how one person refused to fit the mold and changed the landscape instead. But I want to leave you with a lingering question to turn over in your own mind.
Okay.
Think back to her operational rule. If a trend is staring at you, you have to keep talking about it. Look around your own life, your workplace, your dorm, your industry. What is the trend, the unspoken truth, or the brilliant idea in your current environment that everyone else is ignoring because it's inconvenient to the way things are currently done?
That's a great question.
And more importantly, are you willing to be the broken record that keeps bringing it up, holding on to your vision until you finally have the authority to change it? Remember, the world does not need you to fit into its pre-made, rigid mold. The most powerful shape you can take in any room is your own. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.